The Morning Dump from Hurrdat Sports with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
No DB today as he's out sick. He had a long weekend, and that is not an understatement. First, it started with Westside moving on as they fight for a state championship. That started Friday. 40-degree weather, cold. Was it rainy Friday, Shaner? Was it misty at all on Friday?
It might have been.
So that must have been tough on DB as he's been trying to protect the vocal cords. He then had to intern, wake up at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, head over to Lincoln, make sure he could be on the airwaves for the pregame show for the Husker football game as that started at 11. I don't know what he did following the football game, but I'm sure he did some type of wrap-up show. He's getting Monday off, taking Monday off so that he can rest his voice, make sure
it's unbelievable.
It is, to a degree, it is. But you know, he's resting his voice. He's feeling better today. So hopefully we'll have DB back tomorrow. But morning dump continues.
Come on, man.
Everybody has their morning dump. It's daily, so we have to make sure we keep producing it daily for you.
That's not true.
It is, though. It is. Extra conversations, extra sports. And let's get into this. Nebraska, Minnesota recap. Nebraska had every opportunity to win that football game on Saturday. They had an impressive opening drive. It started with Anthony Grant running 6 times for 60 yards. His first carry went for 35 yards. It ate up a lot of clock, too, and that's something that I mentioned ahead of time. If you can win the time of possession, you could probably win this football game even if you don't win the turnover battle. You go and close out the first quarter with a 10-0 lead. 10 first-quarter points. Then you go into halftime with a 10-0 lead over Minnesota. Everything's looking great. Your defense has been flying around. They looked awesome up front. 3 sacks on Tanner Morgan. Mo Ibrahim was not having a whole lot of success on the ground. Things were looking good. You held Mo to a season low, I would say. I don't know if it was his exact season low, but yards per carry, he only had about 4 yards per carry. And in college football, we talk about it a lot here on this show. You normally see guys of his caliber somewhere around 5 or 6 yards per carry. Then Tanner Morgan didn't amount to much either. But I didn't account for the backup quarterback coming in and being Minnesota's saving grace in this football game. He wasn't overly special. He underthrew a for sure touchdown pass. I can't remember if it was back end of the third quarter or if it was early on in the fourth quarter. But Minnesota started to produce on plays that Nebraska just wasn't ready for. They weren't expecting them to throw the football as much. But I feel like you should have whenever you see you're up in the game by 10-plus points, or rather just 10 points. You look at, though, a backup quarterback coming in, and I understand how you would think Mo Ibrahim would just completely take over this game, as he probably should have. And he started to as the game went on. He had those short yardage carries that ended up getting first downs, and Minnesota started to really eat in the time of possession category. But then you look at the backup quarterback and you're thinking maybe they won't throw as much. So I get that perspective. But once they do, you have to start recognizing it sooner. You really do. You lost the turnover battle. Again, it wasn't very large. It was 1-0. But Purdy's pass on 3rd and 15 wasn't Purdy. Situationally, in a 13-10 game, I know why Purdy was looking downfield, but he was staring down Trey Palmer the entire time. Throws it, triple coverage, intercepted. I said this on the Sports Six-Pack, and you'll hear me say it on the morning dump. Chubba was in too long. He was in too long. You gave both quarterbacks even reps in practice. At some point, Nebraska was going to put in Logan Smothers, but why wait until the fourth quarter to do it? Why wait until you're down 20-10 in this football game? You weren't moving the football offensively. You had one drive that was longer than 3 plays outside of your first 2 sets of plays, sets of possessions. 6 straight drives of 3 and outs. At some point, you need to recognize that if you warm up 2 quarterbacks in practice all week, mix and match. You have to mix and match. Nothing was working offensively. I know you're still winning the football game and you feel comfortable, but a 10-point lead in college football is nothing to feel comfortable about. You can't sit back and relax and think Minnesota's not going to put up points at all in the second half. You can't do that. You go into halftime on a trend of 3 and outs. You come out of halftime with a trend of 3 and outs. After that first 3 and out, I'm thinking, Logan, you're in for the next drive. That's my thought process. Why that wasn't the case, I don't know. I think it was a big miss by the Nebraska coaching staff. The defense did its job. Why did they allow 20 points in the second half? Well, they were tired. 3 first-half sacks, 4 straight punts after the 10-0 lead. After the 10-0 lead, Minnesota clearly got back to their old ways, winning the time of possession by nearly 10 minutes by game's end. In the second half, there was no time. Nebraska felt comfortable with their 10-point lead. There was 0. So that's why I'm talking about all of the shifts that need to be done at that point in the game. There was at a time from when Nebraska had a 10-point lead and Nebraska had a 10-point deficit where the offense had a longer drive than 1 minute and 20 seconds. Your defense is tired.
Yeah, that's not good.
Your defense can't come onto the field, and you can't expect them to stop Minnesota every single time when they just run the ball down your throat. And they take up 14, 15 plays to do it. They eat the clock. That's how they beat teams. 3rd and 5 play from midfield is probably still haunting Logan Smothers, too. Late in that football game.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot of green grass ahead of him, and he chose to throw the football out of bounds in the direction of a receiver, overthrown. But you extend drives by making that run. But do I blame Logan Smothers for that? No. Because he should have been in the game longer to have more time to recognize what Nebraska can accomplish whenever the game is either tied or whether they're down 3 points. But he comes in and they're down 10 points. He's just trying to make plays happen. He's just trying to put points on the board at this point. And you didn't give him a lot of time to get comfortable. And, again, I think that falls back on the coaching staff. Now, although that 4th down pass play that was dropped by Trey Palmer, I would venture to say that's uncharacteristic from him. Smothers does need to recognize that on 3rd and 5, when you roll out of the pocket, you first move left, you push the defense all to one side of the field, then you roll back right. You need to run that football. You need to get that first down. You need a fresh set of 4, and then that can lead you further on in the football game. After the game, the team was noticeably defeated, as they should be. That game, I said it all week, Shaner, that was the best chance Nebraska had to win down the stretch.
Well, like Damon said on the broadcast, it's a slow bleed. I mean, that's really what it was. I mean, you felt there was at some point in the game you felt really good, and then it just went downhill, and they couldn't turn it back around to get it to go positive for them.
Offensively, just things weren't getting done. So you have to make a change. You have to be a smart enough coaching staff to recognize that what Chubba Purdy and the offense was doing after the first 2 possessions wasn't working. If everybody can see it sitting at home thinking 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, what are we doing? I know the lead says I know the score says 10-0, But you have to be better about making a change, making an adjustment so that you can add to your lead. You have to add to leads in college football because things can change lickety-split.
There's been too many times this year, and it's been too many times over the season, especially with the Scott Frost teams, where they get to a point and they almost like they think they've got it, and then it goes bad.
You have to win out now to be bowl eligible. And the biggest of all juggernauts lies ahead. And this is tough for me because what's easier to do at this point? Is it pick up the pieces and look toward the future? Or is it prepare a game plan that's unique and flashy enough to take down Michigan? I'm not saying what Nebraska will do because everybody knows they're going to, hey, keep it with the game at hand. That's where we're focused. We're focused on Michigan. We need to beat Michigan. But what's easier to do is the question. Is it easier at this point to just pick up the pieces and look toward the future? Is it easier to just say, hey, let's get a head coach in now, whoever it is, if it's going to be Mickey, is it going to be somebody from the national coaching search, so that they can start recruiting now again?
Well, whoever the coach is, if it's this current staff, if it's Mickey, they need to treat the game like this is the last game that they've got. They've got one shot.
Which one? Michigan?
Going forward, each game they've got one shot.
Yep. So, see, that's what I know they'll do.
They have to do that.
But I'm saying what's easier to do? Is it easier to just say, let's cut our losses and look toward the future? Look toward the future as in recruiting for next season. Just pick up the pieces and move forward. I think it's easier to do that, but I know what Nebraska will do, and that's look toward next game and every game after that. Hey, it's this game, it's this game, it's this game. We're worried about this week. We're not worried about 10 weeks down the road.
And they got to do it. They got to do it when they do that. Worry about the entire game, not just the first half. Make those adjustments. They got to do better. We all know that. I mean, we're preaching to the choir here. It's been this way for way too long.
Nebraska has always found a way to win or keep a game close every season, right? Against a team like a Michigan caliber, right? So maybe it's this week. Maybe they beat Michigan.
On ABC, that'd be great.
Maybe they beat Michigan. I just think it's going to be a bloodbath.
Slow bleed, like Damon said?
No, I think we're going to bleed out. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a slow bleed. I think it's going to be very quick.
Well,
I know people don't want to hear that, but let's be realistic.
Game over.
You're not going to win a football game by holding a 10-0 lead for most of this game. You're just not going to do it. Also on the forefront of today, college basketball begins. We'll get to this quick. Creighton against St. Thomas. Creighton 25.5-point favorites. I'm interested to see St. Thomas this year, though. And people may be like, why? Why are you interested in St. Thomas? Well, St. Thomas last year was a D3 team, frankly. They recruited as a D3 team. Now they're D1, and now they got to recruit as a D1 team. So I'm interested to see how they play because they had some good games in the Summit League last year. They really did. Nebraska against Maine, 21-point favorites. What are you hoping to see out of the Huskers this year? Think about that going into tonight's matchup against Maine. The Huskers, 9 scheduled non-conference games, 5 come against Power 6 conference teams. I'm just really interested to see North Dakota State transfer Sam Griesel, the hometown boy. Is he going to be Nebraska's go-to option this year? No McGowan's. Who's it going to be? Who's going to step up for Nebraska? Omaha takes on KU, Kansas, the reigning national champions, 34.5-point favorites. The Mavericks have completely changed, though. They have a new look, new head coach. I'm not saying that, an upset's going to take place here, but I think 34 points is a lot to cover for KU, for a team as
So you're putting your money down?
I'll put my money on Omaha. You going to cut that? You going to clip that one, Shaner?
No big deal.
The women's basketball schedule looks like this. Nebraska against Omaha. The Mavericks return 4 starters from last season. Watch out for Grace Cave. She's really good. She played at PBA, 2021 when she won a state title? I think it was 2 years ago that happened. But the Huskers have a lot of talent too, and they moved through Bourne and Markowski. They also have the South Dakota State transfer, Maddie Kroll, who's very familiar with UNO, so keep an eye on that tonight. Creighton against South Dakota State University. I almost said San Diego State. This is a top 25 matchup on the women's side. Funny enough, this is the only top 25 matchup of the day between both men and women. The Jackrabbits went 28-9 last season. They claimed the WNIT championship. But both teams have 4 of their 5 starters back. So some exciting basketball taking place locally. And college basketball is my favorite sport. That's kind of a bold thing to say for somebody.
And that surprises me. And we were talking about that earlier, and I'd asked you if you'd gone, since you're from St. Louis, if you had made it over when Creighton was down there any time for any of the tournaments. Well,
yeah, the last tournament I attended in St. Louis was the SEC tournament. And that was when Michael Porter Jr. was playing, Kevin Knox for Kentucky was playing, Colin Sexton for Alabama. So that was what I attended. And the Volunteers, the Tennessee Volunteers, were one of the favorites that year. But ultimately, I think it was Kentucky that pulled that one out. Yeah. Aside from that, though, Mo Valley didn't really catch a lot of that. I caught a couple of Missouri State basketball games, but that's about it.
That's about it.
Yeah. SLU. I caught some SLU Atlantic 10 basketball, and that's some good basketball. I mean, we saw what Richmond did to Iowa last year in the NCAA tournament. The Atlantic 10 can be good. They can be really good. So college basketball is just exciting because there's so many different variables. It's a game of runs, and that's why I love the sport of basketball too. A team could be down 14 points.
It's exciting.
With 6 minutes to play, and then end up being up 5 points with 2 minutes to play.
It's important. I mean, most of
you go up 14-3 run, you're back in most games. You're back in most games. I'm excited to hear Nick Baugh on some broadcasts as well.
He's always good. He's my guy.
Big fan of Nick Baugh. I want to hear some yelling, some screaming on those Fox broadcasts.
I'll tee off Tiger Woods.
Love me some Nick Baugh, so I'm excited to see what he has to offer on the broadcast this year. We talked to him earlier.
Movies. You're talking about Homeward Bound. But what about Problem Child? It was really good.
Can we get a little bit of that on the broadcast?
That would be great.
That's
probably the first time that's ever aired right there.
People would probably go nuts on Twitter if that happened. It would be one of 2 avenues. It would be one, I love this guy. This guy's awesome. He's so funny. Or it's, get this guy off the broadcast. That's the world we live in. There's no in between. There's no balance. Nick Baugh is remaining for a long time, people, though.
I open up some salsa, explodes all over my chest.
Can't wait. Cannot wait. That's basically it. A good Monday morning recap here for the morning dump.
Do we know what game Nick's doing first?
I don't.
Is it
Old Dominion.
Could be. I did see him tweet today, though, about an important college basketball note that there is no more flop warning this season. So if officials think you flopped, it's a Class B technical foul.
Man down.
That means 1 free throw shot, and then the ball goes back to the point of the interruption.
Meet me at the rim.
Yes, I will, Nick Baugh. DB, hopefully we have you back tomorrow in the chair. That's your morning dump.
Before we leave,
okay.
Can I ask you one question?
Let me hear it.
Are the St. Louis Blues the worst team in the NHL right now?
Are
they?
Hey, Wipe, get on with your day.
Is that for another dump?
Wipe, get on with your day. We'll see you tomorrow.